Ебать! Снял?
Ukraine planned a coordinated strike on Crimea, targeting fuel and rail logistics. Should Ukraine hit an oil depot, strike trains, or disrupt supply lines? Every option matters, but together they reshape the battlefield. Over the weekend, Ukraine did all of it, launching a coordinated assault that degraded Russian fuel infrastructure across the peninsula. Oil depots, trains, and fuel bases burned for hours overnight as drones and missiles disrupted the logistics network that feeds Vladimir Putin's forces. Russian air defenses did not prevent multiple impacts, increasing logistical pressure. On November 7th, the Kyiv Independent and several other outlets reported a series of wide-ranging Ukrainian strikes throughout occupied Crimea, orchestrated by Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, or SSO. These attacks used long-range drones to hit a major oil depot, 2 trains, and several logistical facilities across the annexed peninsula. In a statement on Telegram, the SSO announced, "SSO burns down enemy oil depots in temporarily occupied Crimea." The first confirmed hit came at the Vardiske oil depot, located near the village of Vardiske, about 20 kilometers, roughly 12 miles, from Simferopol, Crimea's major hub. The SSO's report read, "SSO drones struck the Vardiske oil depot near the village of Vardiske in the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. An RVS 400 tank was destroyed. At the time of the strike, it was full." The Kyiv Independent added that the RVS 400 was designed to store crude oil and petroleum, and that it was reported destroyed. United 24 Media reported that the first explosions were heard at 2:17 a.m. local time, and that residents in Simferopol could hear the blasts from their homes. Flames soon engulfed the depot. The Crimean Wind Telegram channel offered more details, suggesting that Ukraine used not only drones, but also missiles. Its post read, "Around 3 a.m., 4 missiles were reported from Vardiske, with smoke rising over the village. It is unknown whether they hit the airfield or the oil depot." While the exact target remains unclear, the Vardiske oil depot appears to have borne the brunt of the attack. Videos purportedly showed the glow of the fire visible from Simferopol, visible on the horizon. A second clip captured the distinct sound of drones or missiles flying overhead in the darkness, underscoring how intense and close the strikes were. While the depot burned, Ukraine's other drones had more work to do. Militarny reported that during the night of November 5th and 6th, 2 Russian trains carrying petroleum products were destroyed in a drone assault. Both were stationed at a loading and unloading site near the Vardiske depot. Whether they were being filled or emptied didn't matter. Those fuel wagons are gone, and the supplies intended for Russian soldiers won't reach the front. Ukrinform confirmed the location and timing of the attacks, noting that the 2 trains were close to the same site struck earlier. To back up its claims, the SSO released drone footage on YouTube showing direct hits. In one clip, a Ukrainian drone dives into the side of a Russian train, igniting multiple tankers. The operation didn't stop there. After taking out the depot and the trains, Ukraine's drones struck several fuel bases across the Crimean peninsula. News Sky reported on November 7th that the SSO targeted depots in Simferopol and the nearby village of Bitumne. The SSO confirmed this on Telegram, writing, "SSO drones also struck several oil depots and fuel and lubricants warehouses in Simferopol and the surrounding area, the village of Bitumne. Tank park facilities were reported destroyed. Numerous fires were recorded." The mention of a tank park suggests more infrastructure may have been hit than has yet been confirmed. Fires were seen across multiple locations, and whether those came from direct hits or falling debris, Ukraine achieved its goal. Every liter of lost fuel is a liter that Russia cannot use. By the end of the operation, between the nights of November 5th and 6th, Ukraine had devastated a significant portion of Russia's fuel network in Crimea. A major oil depot and 2 fuel trains were destroyed, and multiple storage facilities and tank parks were left burning. It was a calculated, layered strike, meant to disrupt Russia's ability to move and store the fuel it needs for its war effort. The result was not only physical destruction, but also observers described psychological effects alongside physical damage, reminding Russia that nowhere on the peninsula is safe. Predictably, Russia's defense ministry had little to say. The media reported no official statement about the strikes, though the Crimean Wind Telegram channel mentioned that Russian officials claim to have shot down 7 Ukrainian drones over Crimea. We know about 2. One was shot down near the oil depot in Simferopol, the second by something flammable in Vardiske, the channel added, before asking pointedly, where are the other 5? With videos, eyewitness reports, and fire visible for miles, the evidence suggests Russia is once again hiding the scale of its losses. The question, then, is why these targets, and why now? Ukraine's strikes fit into a broader campaign to undermine Russia's fuel logistics. Earlier this fall, Ukraine began systematically attacking refineries deep inside Russian territory. As of early October, the Kyiv Independent reported that Ukrainian drones had hit 16 of Russia's 38 oil refineries. Each of these facilities turns crude oil into gasoline and diesel. Disrupting that process has forced Russia to manage widespread fuel shortages, particularly in Crimea, where about half the peninsula's gas stations were shut by late September. By October 28th, the Moscow Times reported that Crimea's authorities had increased the amount of fuel individuals could buy at gas stations from 20 litres to 30 litres, a little under 8 gallons per person. It was a small relief, but hardly a return to normalcy. According to the Atlantic Council, citing the International Energy Agency, Ukraine's refinery strikes have reduced Russia's refining capacity so significantly that the country's oil industry is expected to remain below normal processing levels until at least mid-2026. With refineries crippled, Ukraine has now shifted its focus to the next links in the chain: depots, trains, and fuel bases. By attacking those, Ukraine multiplies the pressure, cutting off stored reserves and the routes that deliver fuel to the front. It's a strategy that forces Russia to make hard choices: send what's left of its fuel to the battlefield or keep civilians supplied. Either choice imposes costs on military operations or on civilians. For soldiers on the front lines, these hits mean slower vehicle movement, fewer tank offensives, and longer delays in resupply. For civilians in Crimea, they mean more rationing and longer lines. And for Moscow, the hits land at a moment of deep economic strain. Inflation has hovered above 8% for over a year, and the Kremlin is reportedly preparing new domestic taxes to offset the drop in energy revenue. Sanctions and Ukraine's attacks have left Russia selling less oil and gas, and making less money from each sale. The more Ukraine strikes, the more the Russian government squeezes its own people to compensate. This is the essence of Ukraine's campaign: pressure that multiplies. It's not just about explosions or numbers destroyed, but about eroding the capacity to wage war. Each depot burned and each train derailed amplifies the fuel shortages already plaguing Crimea and southern Russia. The combined effects ripple through every system that depends on petroleum, from troop transport to civilian cars. Railways, in particular, are a vulnerability. Russia relies on them for almost all freight and troop movements. The country's defense minister, Andrei Belousov, is also the chairman of Russian Railways, a dual role that shows how closely tied the system is to the war effort. Disrupting rail means disrupting war. Back in June, the Moscow Times warned that while Russia's rail network is massive and difficult to destroy, it is essential to sustaining the war. That warning came just as Ukraine launched an underwater drone attack on the Kerch Bridge, the main rail artery connecting Crimea to mainland Russia. The bridge survived, but the intent was unmistakable. Russia's supply lines are now targets. United 24 later reported that Ukrainian intelligence is working with partisan groups inside Russia to sabotage trains and infrastructure. These groups, operating under the direction of Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, the attacks on Crimea's trains show that this strategy now spans land and air, combining sabotage with drone warfare to choke Russian freight at multiple points. SSR operations demonstrate a new approach to war: strikes on enemy rear bases, the use of drones for pinpoint attacks on reserves, creating instability and increasing the blackout effect for army logistics. The war in Crimea has long since turned into a front against energy infrastructure. The Geneva Center for Security Policy also observed that Ukraine's use of cheap, flexible technologies like drones and AI has redefined how smaller nations can fight against far larger militaries. This conflict has exposed the excessive cost of outdated doctrines, vulnerable legacy systems, and rigid command structures. In other words, numerical advantages have been offset by adaptable, lower-cost tactics. Ukraine has turned intelligence, software, and inexpensive hardware into a weapon system that can reach anywhere, from refineries in Ryazan to rail yards in Crimea. Putin's initial belief that Russia's greater numbers in tanks, aircraft, and soldiers would secure victory, that strategy is about attrition, but not the old kind measured in tanks and trenches. This is economic attrition, aimed at the arteries of supply. The fuel depots, trains, and refineries that sustain Russia's military are now the main front. Each strike erodes Russia's operational tempo and pushes its war deeper into the realm of scarcity. The consequences are already visible. Crimea's gas stations remain rationed. The Kremlin faces a choice between fuel for tanks and fuel for homes. Inflation is rising, and public patience is thinning. Russia's propaganda machine can claim that drones were shot down, but it can't hide the smoke on the horizon or the shortage at the pump. Ukraine, meanwhile, keeps adapting. Its drone and missile tactics have evolved into synchronized, layered attacks designed to overwhelm defenses and target vulnerabilities in sequence. A recurring pattern has emerged. Nighttime drone swarms followed by missile salvos and post-strike imagery. Every strike doubles as both a military operation and an information weapon. Looking ahead, several signs will reveal how effective this strategy remains. Watch whether Russia increases fuel shipments through the Kerch Bridge or diverts to riskier sea routes. Watch for new rationing measures in Crimea. Limits could tighten again after this weekend's losses. Monitor whether Moscow disperses its fuel storage sites into smaller caches to avoid mass losses, or whether it continues to centralize and risk bigger burns. Pay attention to any new Russian electronic warfare deployments around depots and rail yards. And finally, keep an eye on partisan operations. Every sabotage act behind Russian lines now fits into a coordinated pattern of strikes designed to grind the war machine down from within. Ukraine's goal is not to win by overwhelming force, but by making Russia's strength unsustainable. The weekend's incidents indicate the strategy's effects. A single RVS 400 tank destroyed while full, 2 trains destroyed, multiple fuel bases burning. Each is a pressure point that adds to the broader strain on Moscow's military economy. New Sky described it best. The war in Crimea has long since turned into a front against energy infrastructure. That front rewards adaptation and precision. Ukraine has shown both. And now is whether Russia can adjust fast enough to survive. As Ukraine continues to refine this layered strategy, drones, missiles, and partisans working in unison, key questions are whether Russia disperses storage, adjusts routes, and improves defenses.